everybody. It has been a long time, both to be on camera for the channel a little bit, because I don't usually take this much time off, and also for actual Heresy Hump Day. It's been a long time since I've done one of these. And so today I'm going to try to do my best to do a classic Heresy Hump Day for those of you that used to watch those. And also just going to run through some topics. The topics today I have are absences and absence from the channel and things like that. A bit of an update on that, but then also just a general update. And then also I wanted to do a little bit of a topic on cinema as far as some shows or movies that I've watched recently and just some shouts and things in regards to that. Most of this is going to be miniature wargaming today. Some of this is going to be a bit life related as well too. And so I'll do my best because I'm a little bit out of practice on this sort of format. And so in the typical Heresy Hump Day style, as I always used to do, I have a brew here today, right here. This is by Unibrew, and this is, I believe, out of Quebec, and they're Belgian-style beers. They're actually usually fairly strong beers, and sometimes a little too strong for me. I've mentioned on the channel, I'm not really that into like 12% beer, personally. I got these as a gift a while ago. They've actually been in my fridge for quite some time because I have had some trouble with some of them. But I had a 9% one yesterday, and it was actually quite nice. I was actually pleasantly surprised. I enjoyed it. So I figured I might as well pull this other one I've never had out here. This is called Blanc de Chambly. Somebody may know this one already, but this is only 5% as far as the alcohol content, so kind of nice. I wasn't really sure when I was going to open this today. Yeah. So, I'm going to start the show tonight with doing both a table update and a gaming update. The gaming's a little easier because I don't have to go down to tabletop, so I'm just going to start with that first. And I have been doing some gaming. I guess I would say more so a couple weeks ago and before that than the last week or two. Not as much, but I've gotten a number of games in, and a lot of them are the games that I like to play, that I always come back to. Some of them are ones that I played a bit, and I'm glad to get more games in, and some of them are just ones you might expect if you watch the channel that I actually quite like always going back to. And so I have played Dragon Rampant, a couple of games of that, and really enjoyed that game. I've played Star Wars Armada, one that I always really like to come back to, and I always have a fun game in Star Wars Armada. And then I've played some Epic 40K, and then I've also played some Saga, the historical side. I haven't got into the Age of Magic yet, but have played in the last month or so, month and a half, I would say. I think I've gotten 2 games in recently, but more recently, the last one I think was in maybe 3 weeks or so ago. But yeah, had some great games, and these are ones I can play, and I pretty much know I'm going to have a good time whenever I pick them up and play with friends, because I just really enjoy them. So that's kind of my gaming that I've been doing. Now, for Table Down, I'm going to have to switch cameras, and so I'll be right back. So I usually take the month of July off, and this has really been no different. I've only really started painting in the last couple of days. So I'm going to show just a little bit of things I've purchased recently, some things I'm working on at the moment, just starting to work on again, and just, mainly and then just kind of what's coming up next. And yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the sort of lack of painting in the next subjects and the updates. But as I said I was going to, I've actually been working on this carriage, and so I do have a little bit to do on this still. Like, I've not done anything with the reins and some of the bridle that will go from the drivers, because I've not put the drivers on yet, and I'll show them here. But I questioned a little bit my decision to paint this brown after realizing I was going to paint the ground brown, because it creates kind of a little bit more of a bland look to it. Now I have highlighted the detail in yellow, and so I do like the way the detail is popped on this, and I think it really does look nice now that it has paint on it as a carriage. What I will do is put a lot of green and flock and things on the base. I just wanted to make it more of a simple wood look for this, rather than paint it like a red or a blue or something really fancy. Even my drivers, they're not going to be military, they're going to be more civilian. And so this is just meant to be just a kind of a simple coach carriage. I did, in order to deal with some of the blandness of my decisions, I'm painting some color into it, both in the riders as well as you can see in some of the bridle stuff here, or different colors. And so, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at so far on it. But I think it's kind of coming out cool. It's going to be a nice little thing on the table, I think, for my musket and tomahawks and sharps practice. Now I am just starting to block in the colors for the drivers and the riders and such. I have 2 drivers for the front, and really there's nothing special here. I'm just getting started, like I said. I have not painted the hair or the hat or the boots yet. Just have gotten some stuff on the shirts and the pants and choices of color schemes, and you know, not done the hair and things yet. And then I also will have a guy hanging off the back, which he's got like, looks like a horse whip or something in his hand, but he's just going to be essentially, I built this piece here. Let's see here. Oops. Sorry about that. I built this piece he can stand on. He's going to be just grabbing onto the back and hanging on the back. Yeah. So that's kind of what I'm just working on, as a simple little thing to get back into painting again, and have enjoyed that. I've got a couple things, just purchases, and these are for games that I'm playing a lot of, and I know I'll always want to add some stuff to. But I've got 3 of these Thunderbolts for Epic. Now these have been painted, but I'm going to be stripping them. And they came with different bases than the one I've had already here, but I've had these same ones that are, these are all metal. They've done a couple of versions of the Thunderbolts in Epic. I believe these are a later one, but that would match sort of my army, because I don't have like an early, I have more of an Armageddon style army, I believe anyway. But yeah, these are Thunderbolts to use as a Imperial Naval detachment for my Warhammer 40k Space Marines. And so yeah, I'm looking forward to adding these, and so I'll paint these guys 5 up to have for my games of Epic. And I also have something I mentioned that I was working on before I kind of went on hiatus, and I'll just pop these right in front of you. So I have those Ungors here that I had mentioned that I'd be doing in the near future for my Beastmen army. These guys do have the epoxy sculpt on them. I've not primed them yet, but I have like 31 of these here, I believe, is what I've got. Kind of an odd number, but yeah, I've got plenty of them to use for really anything I want to do. These are the ones that are holding... They're more line infantry. I have skirmishers too that are considered skirmishing Ungors. I have less of them, but I have here basically a block of them. I've not put their shields on yet. One of the things I am debating on what I'm going to do, I mean, I'm really ultimately wanting to use these for Warhammer Fantasy, and particularly 6th edition, and I am planning on putting shields on them no matter what. Unfortunately, to use them in Saga Age of Magic, I have to look into it, but I'm a little concerned, because if I put shields on them, I mean, I suppose you could throw a javelin with a shield in, you know, but really, actually, to use them as levy within Age of Magic, they're not supposed to have shields. You know, they're just supposed to have javelins. And I think I can get away with these little spears as being javelins. I don't think anybody give me a hard time with that, but it may not look great if they actually have shields on. So I guess it really just depends as to how much of a stickler somebody is. As to whether I can use these little guys, even though they have shields, as levy with javelin and Saga, because I don't really want to use hand-to-hand levy in Saga. They're not. I mean, like I think they're better off as ranged models in my experience. Typically, whether that be using bows or using javelins, that's their strength, and so we'll see. In any case, I'm painting these up, and they're going to suit my needs for Warhammer Fantasy and be geared towards that. And so I'm looking forward to painting these up. I'll be doing these soon. My plan on these is to paint them in the same colors as I did my Beastmen, the 3 different types, in the last videos. But the one thing I am going to do is, because these guys are meant to be more human-like and really in that earlier part of the initial transformation into beastmen. What I'm wanting to do is to see if I can get a better focus here. I'm wanting to add more skin tones like I was experimenting with last time in the centers and have it bleed out into the exteriors. Just definitely more flesh tones to represent their closer ties to humanity. And I think it makes them look a little bit creepier, to be honest, which I think is good and kind of suits me. Lastly, what I'll just show, I'm not doing an unboxing here, but because I've really enjoyed my game last time of Armada so much, I always tend to, either with a game coming up or when I've just had a game and enjoyed it, I tend to pull something out that, sorry, I'm just going to have to pull back again here. So I ended up purchasing 2 things to support my fleet, my Rebel fleet in Armada. My last game, I used a lot of small ships with maybe 1 large ship instead of having, let's say, 2 large ships, to be able to really duke it out. I tried to strategically use a bit more of a bigger fleet, and I kind of thought I wouldn't mind having this one here. This one is called the Phoenix Home. It looks like, in some ways, it has a lot of the resemblance of the smaller class, faster maneuverable ships. It has that design in the model, but just a bit more it has wing, sort of things on the sides here, and it's not as streamlined as those smaller ships, but it's of that design. This is a bit of a support command craft, and so I thought it'd be neat to just try that. Of course, it's got the accessories and your cards and things to change your game a little bit as well. And then I've never had the Rebel transports. This is a style of ship in the game that, I almost hesitate to call it a ship, but it's sort of in between squadrons and ships, and they add a little bit of the best of both worlds and what they can do. I mean, they give you extra activations because they activate like ships do, so that gives you a bigger activation pool for smaller amount of points. And then depending on whether you get the Imperial or the Rebel ships, they have some different advantages within the game. And so so I thought this would be neat to continue to, I guess, bulk up my choices and my Rebels for Star Wars Armada, which is a game I'm really glad I've gotten into years ago. A friend and I that I play with, we always seem to enjoy it. It's just a really fun game. Alright, so I'm going to get back to the chat. So, that's my sort of update for gaming and table update, and now we're going to get into more of the waxing lyrical, as my compadre Rusty would often say, in our Musty Wargamers, which I am looking forward to getting back to in the fall. And I've already picked something out for our next Old Hammer Challenge, which we normally do in September, but I've not, in all fairness, discussed it with Rusty yet, so I'm not sure when we're doing it, but that's usually what we do, sometime in September. So, it's not bad, actually. I'm not a huge Belgian beer fan, that's why it's been in my fridge for so long, but actually not too bad. I like that. Maybe that 5% suits me a bit. So, in order to kind of be able to live up to this format that I've always done, I do have my trusty set of notes over here that I've prepared for the talk today. And, I think what I'm going to start with is the why I have been absent. Now, some of you may not be surprised because I do actually take the month of July off typically, and this kind of is, I am pretty much taking the month of July off. I mean, I've really done very little painting. And but I have to say it's a little bit different this year. This is the 3rd year I've done that. It's a little, maybe even 4th, but it's a little different this year, and that I really questioned a bit some of my commitment to this hobby in the overall scheme of other things I do in life. And we had recent talks on the Musty Wargamers about work-life balance and hobby balance. And, one of the things is I really love this hobby, and I don't see myself stopping it. But I don't know about you guys, but sometimes in my life, at least, I look for outlets for reasons at times. And whether it be, like, my family is, of course, really important to me, and that's something that I've never kind of relaxed my attention on, you know, in the sense that I always participate in a big part of my family, and that's a huge part of life. But, you know, work has changed for me over the years, and it's changing probably in the future as well. And there are times when my attention span and the amount of energy I have towards things waxes and wanes depending on what I have going on in my life. And one of the things that's been really great about this hobby for me is that it's really tapped into both my imagination as well as like developed artistic skills in some ways, and it's allowed me to explore over the last 7 years since I've gotten back into wargaming and modeling, crafting, and things like that. It's allowed me to not only build that kind of stuff, but also tap into imagination and things like that, which I've always enjoyed. And I've went through periods in my life where I've kind of stifled that or just didn't have room for it. And I'm kind of happier when I have an outlet like that, not just watching movies, but doing something like this. And so I'm really appreciative of it, and I don't see myself changing it. Now, when I first started thinking about this, I was thinking, you know, it's July and it's only like the beginning of July, like when I was having these thoughts, and I was like, you really should just take the month off and not make any conclusions. and I kind of have done that, and I've kind of realized how much I kind of like the hobby, which I always do in July. But the reason for this is I've sold a bunch of stuff that was related to my reef keeping and aquarium hobby that I've had for years. And some of them were big investments when I was running multiple fish tanks and things like that. And years ago, I actually consolidated down to one tank in my living room, a display tank. And while I've had other things going on in my life, and while I've focused on this hobby, at times I've not given it the attention it's needed, and I've kept it on autopilot where I did enough for it, but it wasn't thriving the way I wanted it to. And after selling some big stuff recently, I kind of was getting more in touch with that hobby again, and even interacting with some folks with it, and just thinking about it and looking at mine. And so I've been spending more time on my reef tank, and just, you know, it's always been something that's relaxed me, but I've really not dedicated the time that I've liked to it recently. So I've actually am doing that now. Like, I'm doing that in addition to this hobby as well. It's just sort of something, and I'm having to balance all this stuff, you know, just to be able to maximize enjoyment and put the time towards all these important things in life, but also that, you know, spending a little bit of time in different things that I enjoy, but not too much in any one of them. And I think that's kind of where I'm going with this, and in the sense of I've kind of realized that I have other updates in regarding this, but I've kind of realized that, you know, you can tell I haven't rehearsed this. I'm going to finish my other updates and I'll make more sense of what I'm about to say. Another big thing that I have, besides knowing that my work's going to be always changing and things like that, you know, as it always has been, down the road, and then these kind of observations I've just mentioned. First myself, but then my whole family have made like a big decision recently, and we've decided to kind of just change the way we eat, and it's not that we were eating really unhealthy or anything like that, but we're actually going towards a plant-based diet, like completely. And I won't go into that too much here for those of you that know what that is. I mean, some people call it vegan and things like that, but that's been a big change in my life, and it's been really positive for me. It wasn't primarily to lose weight or anything like that, but without even, trying really, like just making this switch, I've kind of lost like 14 pounds in like, I guess like a month and a half or something like that, which is interesting, but really it's more just life choices and things like that. And so I've enjoyed that. It's been an interesting change, but then in parallel with that, I used to exercise quite a bit, and in the last few years I haven't been, and I've kind of went back to an exercise regime that I used to do for many, many, many years, and taken an interest in it again, and been adding that as well. So all this stuff really competes, right? Because I've changed my diet a lot, I'm actually cooking probably more than anybody in my house now. It used to be, like, my wife loves to cook, and she's a better cook than I am, but I'm kind of enjoying cooking. Like, I always dabbled in it, and now I'm doing a lot more of it. And so between that and the exercise and getting back into other hobbies again, like the aquariums, and then there's only so much room, right? And so I had to really think, and like, how does all this fit together, and where does the channel and where does my hobbying fit in it? And I think what it really comes down to for me is just perspective in my head. And I think I just, where before I used to always almost look at my hobbying, and not for a while now, but the way I used to look at it was almost like project management. I was always thinking about a couple of projects out, setting things up, getting things in assembly line fashion, and really always in my mind thinking it's important to get stuff done and to move to the next thing. And I don't really have the room for that anymore, to be honest. I think I have to really just do what I want to do at that time, and maybe set priorities, like to get some things done. But I don't want to be painting as much as I have, let's say, a year to two ago. I've had moments even this year where I was painting quite a bit, bursts and then breaks. But I think I need to just, I'm going to, probably transition the channel into my painting updates, but there's not going to be as much as maybe there was years ago, always going on every week. But then also just perhaps I'll actually add some battle reports in again. I'm definitely planning on keeping up with Rusty and the Musty Wargamers. And having our little challenges would be fun. I mean, that would be a definite focus thing I could do. But I'm having to balance my life a bit more. And that's kind of where I'm going at with the reason for my absence, and just kind of where my head is at. And I don't know how, I think all of us that are either content creators or that are hobbyists that, or participate in these channels, we all kind of focus on how we balance things. And some of us are much more productive than others, and some of us have different reasons and motivations for wanting to do more or less or whatever it is. I don't think there really is a right answer. I just know for me, I think this hobby has been excellent for me in the last 7 years of my life, and in particular, potentially the last 4. But I think something has to change, is what I've realized. And, I think I want to keep it, but I just want it to be a little bit more just a piece and not as encompassing of my personal time as it has been, So I don't know. I'm interested in what you guys think on this subject. I mean, this subject has come up in various forms a lot. I do suspect that a number of content creators go through this and never really talk about it. And I think many of them disappear. And then many of them don't disappear, but they just show up maybe once or twice a year to put something up. I'm being kind of transparent here as part of this show in this. I don't really necessarily want to do that, but I think this is kind of, where I'm heading towards, and the reasons why you'll probably see a change in content. Hopefully, maybe even for the better. Who knows? Maybe it'll actually be better because of it. So what else do I have here? I think I kind of mentioned things about no pressure, just wanting to have fun. And, I think that's always the case. And just tagging on to what I was just saying, less projects, no pressure, just fun. All sounds good. I mean, I think that's what it's supposed to be, even in any circumstance. But so I have to remind myself is probably part of the issue. So my next topic is a little bit of a lighter topic, is cinema. And for the... I watch a lot of shows and movies, so I could be just talking on for hours now, because even during my break I find time to watch stuff. But as many of you know, I like to watch all kinds of movies, but in particular over the last number of years I've really gotten into foreign films, and I guess it's lower budget films and more independent films and things like that. One of the big things that is I'm a huge Marvel fan. And I have struggled, and not really talked about it because I haven't been doing Heresyhumpdays, but I've struggled with the direction up until recently that Marvel's kind of went down. And I don't know that I can totally put a finger on it, and I don't have like something to say negative about Disney or Marvel Studios and like what they've done. But I was enjoying a lot of the films, but then, and I was at all times wondering like how many of these are going to come out, because it's a lot to keep up with. It's a lot of cash, actually. Go to the cinema a lot, if you want to see them all the time. And I stopped doing that. I stopped collecting every Marvel DVD a long time ago because of the amount that come out. But, and don't take this the wrong way, but with the 3 that I choose here, but there were 3 movies that kind of made me really question how much I was going to continue watching all of the Marvel movies, even as a big Marvel fan. And those are Black Panther, The Avengers, Infinity War, and then Captain Marvel. For whatever reason, I don't know if I'm subject to hype, because I know that sometimes when hype gets really big, it raises your expectations. And then when you see it, if it doesn't meet your expectations, you consider it negative, and maybe you would have liked it if it didn't have so much hype. For whatever reason, I didn't really I wasn't overly impressed with Black Panther and Captain Marvel and the way the hype kind of put it up. And so I wasn't really enjoying the movies as much after those three. And Infinity War, I guess you could argue, because if you guys haven't seen, this is a spoiler, but if you guys haven't seen the Avengers Infinity War, I don't mean Endgame, the one that just came out, but the one from a year or two ago, then I'm sorry. But the Infinity War movie kind of ended on a cliffhanger. I'm going to just say it that way so it doesn't actually ruin it for anybody. And it's not so much that the cliffhanger alone bothered me, but with some of these movies sandwiched together and the way it was coming out, I was just starting to not feel things as much. The good news is both Ant-Man and the Wasp movie that followed, as well as Avengers Endgame, I really quite liked. I thought the way they sealed off the first number of stages of Marvel, I guess it's the first 3 stages, but 10 years of Marvel's movies and such, was wonderful. I really loved Avengers Endgame, and in a lot of ways, it really invigorated my enthusiasm for the overall franchise. I thought the changes, and without giving spoilers, some of the characters that happen were good. Some of them were a little hard to take, but I kind of respected the way they did it and really enjoyed the film. And it really has positioned me I'm really looking forward to the future of the franchise now and what they're going to do next. It really has me excited to see where everything's going to go. And that, as somebody that really likes Marvel as much as I have, it was a big part of my life as a child in reading comic books. It really makes me feel good that I can look forward to that, and my family as well. We all pretty much watch it, and and so it's great to be able to kind of look forward to the way things are going, because in the end, I was actually kind of going down in my opinion of things. I think that's really all I have to say about Marvel. There have been a lot of leaks on the movies that are coming out in the future. Some of them are just quite amazing, and I just can't wait to see what they do with them based on their track record in the past. I'm going to throw something out here. I've been wanting to do a topic for Heresyhumpday and just not getting around to doing a show for Aquaman for some time. As many of you may know, when I talk about these superhero things over the years, I'm not a DC fan. I don't have I read some of the comics as a kid, but I was never really gravitated to them as much as Marvel by any means. We usually, as comic book collectors of old, the big DC Marvel rivalry, I mean, pick one side in most cases. Some people like both and don't really differentiate too much. But I saw the movie Aquaman with my wife and kids, and try not to do too many spoilers there, but I went into it really thinking that I wasn't going to like this. And it wasn't because of my sort of affinity for Marvel and not liking DC. It had nothing to do with that, because I am open-minded. I'm one of the rare people out there that actually enjoyed Batman versus Superman. Most people don't like that movie. It really has a lot of hate. I actually kind of enjoyed it. I truly enjoyed that movie. I walked into the films. I knew that they had to change the character they felt they needed to change the character to update him for today's audience. And so when they brought the gentleman's name, I always forget his name, but the guy from Game of Thrones that plays Aquaman, they created a different look, for him, and he's more of an updated look, something that I guess today's audience could maybe identify with more, and I understand why they did that. And going into the movie, I was sort of I get it, but to me, as sort of a kid that grew up with Saturday morning cartoons with Aquaman being orange and green and just with the blonde hair, I really, it kind of spoiled it for me a little bit, and knowing it wasn't going to be like that they changed it that much. I watched the movie, and the movie was truly epic. I mean, the movie, in a lot of ways, even though it's very different from Guardians of the Galaxy, in the way there isn't a group dynamic and they're not as obscure, like Aquaman's not as obscure as they are, and it wasn't as much of an origin in that way. It truly visited so many different places in the film, and it really had kind of aspects to the movie that were on epic proportions, and it was like an adventure from like mostly the beginning of the movie all the way through to the end. They brought in old adversaries that were really nostalgic, that in watching the Super Friends as a child, it made me really like that. And then it eventually turned things around and kind of took the character in a way that was much more classic, like, bringing in that classic element, through the origin and explaining things. And then they almost did something that you can jump ahead if you haven't seen the movie, and I don't want to do too much of a spoiler, but the main adversary of the film, this is the only spoiler I'm going to say here, that was my insight. The main adversary of the film, which was his brother, to me almost epitomized the outward visual and in some ways some of the old feel of the original Aquaman. Because he was a blonde, blue eye, like totally looked different, and just he very much, in my mind, paralleled the original Aquaman in some ways, and by him defeating him, like, I almost felt like they kind of created room for this new version of him, and I thought it was very interesting. So I ended up buying it, and I've seen it again, with my kids, and it was really great in the theater because it was just so majestic, the film. As much as I liked Wonder Woman, I like some of the things that DC has done. This one was truly the best thing I've seen DC do, and maybe, well, the only thing that would come close to me would be the Dark Knight Returns, and the Joker, and some of the films with Christian Bale that I thought were quite good. But beyond that, I just never seen anything from DC quite as good as this. And so, for those of you that enjoy these kind of movies and haven't seen it, I would really highly recommend it. Lastly, I've got this is a bit of a shorter Heresy Hump Day. I'm kind of getting my feet wet, no pun intended, with the recent Aquaman discussion, but I actually have a couple little shout outs for movies that I'm not going to review. I could review them in the future potentially, or just make some comments, but I just wanted to give people tips on some Netflix movies that I thought were really, really good in the horror and the sci-fi genre, which kind of coincides with the channel a bit. I watch a lot of stuff that has nothing to do with I'm going to add one to this because it has nothing to do with sci-fi and horror, but Hereditary, horror film, really, really enjoyed it. It has the actress from Muriel's Wedding. I forget her name, I'm sorry. But it was a really excellent story, a really excellent plot, very original in a lot of ways, very creepy. And so if you like horror films, and a lot of them are really bad, like a lot of horror films I think are really subpar, and I have to go through several of them to get to a good one. This was one as a rewatcher, and it was really quite good. And so Hereditary, if you haven't seen it, I really highly recommend it. Another one is called Prospect. This one is a sci-fi / western, I would say. It's has really interesting, great special effects. It's a lower budget film, as I understand it, but what they've done with it, you would really never know it. It's actually done that well. That was my understanding. It was a really interesting concept in the way they kind of merged the western and the sci-fi genre, but not in an overt way. Like, you're not going to have anybody running through with, like, slinging 6-shooters and stuff like in space. It's nothing like that. It's totally a sci-fi movie, but the way the film is crafted and some of the way the story is, it would remind you of some of the style of a western in some ways. And so Prospect, really great film if you like science fiction. Lastly, I've mentioned this before, but there is a show that is a favorite of mine, and it's an Icelandic drama called Trapped. The second season is available, and I've watched it and I've loved it like as much as the first season. It is different than the first one, but it's excellent. It's on Netflix. I do remember Robert Chisholm telling me that American Netflix doesn't have it. My understanding is that Amazon Prime does now. If you're in the U.S., there may be more than one place you can watch it in the U.S. Definitely in Canada here, I'm able to see it. I believe in the European countries you can see it on Netflix. If you're in Iceland or Norway, I think you can see it on television there. But yeah, so highly recommend Trapped. It's a crime drama, not sci-fi or horror at all. It's a crime drama, but it's Icelandic, and I really enjoy it. So I shout that out as well. So don't know exactly how long I've been going here. I think I'm probably approaching my 30 to 45 minute mark. Closer to that. I've gone a lot longer with some of these. Maybe I'll do some more of these if people enjoy it again, or people enjoy these, and I might end up doing this. I originally, for those of you that have been part of the channel a long time, I used to do a thing called Inquisitorial Thoughts, where it wasn't this format at all, but it was sort of like diving deep into an esoteric topic, involved with wargaming that I might do as like one topic here, a little lighter. And yeah, I think some of those were fun. They weren't that popular, to be quite honest, and so to be honest, I wasn't really too fussed to do them anymore, because I didn't, as much as I like doing the channel, a lot of it's for me, but then also if I'm putting a lot of time into something for an audience and they're not watching it, then I question whether to do it. Heresyhumpday has always been a little bit more popular than that. The Heresyhumpdays, I wouldn't say that I've consciously decided to not do these. I do like this format, but I have put some of the energy into doing the show with Rusty, and we do some of these kinds of topics on Musty Wargamers too, and have our own format there, which is a little different than this. Perhaps a little inspired by this when we first were building it, but not exactly this. Like, we've kind of brought in other ideas, and from Rusty, and like we do a little bit of a different thing. And so I'll be definitely doing that again this fall with Rusty, and maybe doing some of these as well. And yeah, I hope everybody's summer is going really well. I can't believe how fast it goes. I have family coming in a little bit of time off next week, and then I'm taking a little bit of time in August off, and then probably slowly getting back into the swing of things with the channel, during that time, and maybe pop something up here and there in between. Who knows? All right. Hope you guys are having a good one, and take care.